You know what's one of the most common money fights that a married couple usually has? I found that in my experience, one of the most common fights is related to discretionary spending. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then here's an example. I have a very close friend, and he and his wife at the time, they used to fight about money all the time. And one of the most common scenarios went like this. So he would buy a $4 USB stick. He would come home with the $4 USB stick, and his wife would ask, why did you spend money on something that we didn't really need? We already have a whole bunch of USB sticks at home. And then she, at a later time, would buy a $400 Michael Kors handbag. And he would ask, why did you buy another handbag? You already have a ton of handbags. And later on, he would counter by buying a $10,000 fish that died a few years later. But, you get my point, right? Like, they would constantly try to one-up each other with the spending because they thought the other person was spending money on unnecessary stuff. So one of the ways that you can fix this kind of problem and avoid this very common money fight that just doesn't need to happen is by having an allowance system. Now, I've discussed in my previous video on how to successfully combine finances in your marriage about a little bit about this allowance system. But today I want to go over more about how much each spouse should get in this allowance system, because after you understand how the allowance system works, you have to really figure out how much money does each spouse really get to spend? So that's what I'm going to go over today. So there's really two ways that you can go about doing this. You can do a 50-50 split where each spouse has the same amount of money to spend on anything that they want, or you can do a proportional split. So a system where depending on how much money each spouse brought in based on their income into their finances as a household, that's how much money that they would get for their allowance. So for example, if one spouse brought in 60% and the other spouse brought in 40%, then they get a 60-40 split for their personal allowance, or maybe a 70-30 split, whatever it is. But there's pros and cons to each system. It really depends on you and your spouse and what you guys both want. And I find that there is both fairness and unfairness. So let's go over what those are. So the 50-50 personal allowance split. In my opinion, I feel like this kind of split is right for you guys as a couple if you truly believe in the philosophy that your money is our money and my money is our money. So to the two of you, it doesn't matter who or where this money came from, it both belongs to the both of you. Okay, so if this is what you truly believe in, this is the right system for you and you feel like it's fair. If one of you got a promotion and a better paying job, or one of you lost your job, then it's really time for you guys to sit down and make a new budget together where you guys talk about whether to raise or decrease your allowance for each other, because if it's really both of your money, then both of you are affected by this situation, not just one of you, right? So it's at that point that you guys need to talk. And in my opinion, this kind of system really creates this kind of shared common experience. So it's not like just one person suffers from a job loss, both of you suffer at the same time. And also the main benefit of this kind of system is that in terms of spending money on your lifestyle, because the expenses are the same, then there won't be too much of a difference in lifestyles, which I think is important, because I think that if you're married to someone, it's very important that the two of you have basically a general consensus on what your lifestyle should be and what it should look like. What do you guys want to spend your time on, right? And, the way to go about doing that is if you guys have a similar amount of money to spend, really, there's not too much of clash or difference in lifestyle. Okay, so onto the personal allowance split that's based on the proportion of income you each brought into the household. So this system is right for you if you really believe that you should get out in spending money based on what you guys put in. Because, honestly, if one of you guys worked really, really hard to get a promotion at your job, or get really far ahead in your career, or chose something that's more risky but much more profitable, then, you should get rewarded for it by having more spending money, right? If this is what you guys believe in, then this is the system for you. But the main drawback that I see in this is if there were a huge difference in just the amount of income each of you brought in. So let's say it ends up being a 90/10 split, or maybe an 80/20 split. That is such a huge difference where, one person is making so much more money than the other. And if you guys got an allowance like that is like a huge lifestyle difference right there for personal spending, where like, let's say one spouse wanted to go to a fine dining restaurant and the other person just goes like, sorry, can't afford it. And basically, you know, that does affect the two of you as a couple, because you want to have the shared experience of, you know, going to a fine dining restaurant together, but the other spouse is just like, sorry, like, I really can't afford it. It's not in my budget based on the amount of personal spending I got. So if this is like this kind of situation you're in, I don't recommend it. Like, I only recommend the system if like you guys are close enough in income where it doesn't really make a big difference, or if you guys both make so much money where you just have so much discretionary income that it doesn't really matter if one person got 10% and the other person got 90. Like, let's say if you guys made combined like $1 million a year, like, okay, whatever. But if you guys were more closer to the median household in terms of American household income, then yeah, I think it'd be more of a problem. Another thing that you need to take into account if you want to adopt this system is if one spouse lost their job. So, you know, I hate to bring up like negative situations like this, but this is not the kind of situation where like if it's gonna happen, I always feel like because companies always need to make a profit and please their shareholders, it's about when it's gonna happen, you know, because you really don't get to control layoffs in your company unless you're the CEO. If one person lost a job and it took like 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe possibly even like 12 months to find another job, depending on the industry you're in, then it really does affect the two of you. So like you guys need to like already sit down and decide before this ever even happens, like, what are we gonna do if this kind of situation came up where one person wasn't bringing in any income at all, if we're gonna do it based on how much each of us brought in? Because I don't really know, would you really like consider it fair if one person was bringing in nothing, and in that kind of situation you said, well, since I brought in 100%, I get to take 100% of the spending money, and you don't get any spending money for discretionary stuff. You only get to spend money on like the necessary stuff that we actually need for our household, right? Would you really consider that fair? I don't really know. That's something that you need to discuss before it actually happens, because if you don't discuss this and it does happen, then I think you guys are gonna have a fight, and you don't want that, guys, okay? I hope you guys were able to take away some very good information and some ideas that you really do need to consider and go over with your spouse when you guys are creating your allowance system in your marriage. So all the information, guys, on my channel is free for you guys. So if you guys want to financially support my channel, and because I don't take sponsors, if you want to support my channel, I would really appreciate it if you went over to Amazon and bought my book, 1001 Ways to Save Money, Quit Flushing Your Hard-Earned Money Down the Toilet. And if you already bought the book, I would truly appreciate it if you guys left me a review. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and if you haven't done so already, I would really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon for notifications every time I publish a new video on personal finance. I hope to see you guys next time. Bye, guys.